Helen Dalton, Member for Murray, great to have you with us again on Flow.
No, thank you.
Now, first of all, you've made a call that it's good news that the border bubble is starting to grow again, but there's other councils you think should also be included.
Absolutely. So it's fantastic news that the Victorian Government have decided to include Edward River back into the border bubble, or Edward River Council. We really have been advocating for that since they were excluded. So it's a huge relief for these border communities. But I'm also calling on Victorian Government to actually try and expand the border bubble to include Griffith, Leeton, Carrithul, Hay and Murrumbidgee Shires. So they should be back in too, because really the area is one big community, and I know a lot of people have to go down through the border bubble to properties in Victoria, or they've got work in Victoria. So given that we have had no cases in these shires, or really in this part of the electorate for over 12 months, it makes sense for them to be included.
Yeah, what was the latest situation with Albury? There has been some movement on the COVID front at Albury, hasn't there?
There has, but they're out of it now. They're not included in this border bubble at the moment, so they're under quite strict lockdown. And until such time as they're COVID-free, or that they've halted the spread of COVID, then I guess the Victorian Government will make a decision as to whether they're included. But for me and some of my shires, they should really be included back in this border bubble.
Have you had people getting in touch with you about the need to wanting to get into Victoria, or the need to get exemptions? We've heard that there's thousands of people that are stuck, unable to get back into Victoria, or vice versa to New South Wales. Has your electorate office had to work with people in that bracket?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a lot of stranded people. So at the moment, but the Victorian Government is acknowledging that. They have made a few changes and allowing people that have been in the border bubble to move into Victoria. If they've been there COVID-free for 14 days, they can move back down into Victoria. So they're bit by bit, they're gradually, I guess, changing the rules so that it makes it easier for people to get home. But we still have a long way to go. We still need to be advocating strongly for some sensible rules, and also a national approach to this, because the premiers seem to be doing their own thing. They're not working together, and that's at the detriment of people in my electorate, and particularly those along the border communities. And that's both sides of the border too, not just in New South Wales.
Well, that's something one of the border MPs, a member for Lowan in Victoria, said that the Victorian ombudsman has announced an investigation to quickly resolve some of these backlog cases, and she's called for the South Australian ombudsman to do the same, because that's where her border is. What's your view on what the New South Wales ombudsman should be doing?
Well, they should be all working together, but I don't really know why they can't just sit down, particularly with the cross-border commissioners, with probably the health people, and actually nut out some rules, some sensible rules, and rules that are consistent across the borders. I just don't think it's rocket science. But they just refuse to sit down. For some reason, it's difficult for them to actually talk to one another, which is, really people on the border are suffering because they won't sit around a table and discuss some sensible rules. Well, now, if they did develop an app on the phone where everyone had this app, which gave you the information such as where you're from and the destination in which you want to travel to, plug that in and it comes up as a traffic light system. And then if it's either red, green or amber, and if you're on red and you're required permits, then have links to those permits, or gives you the reasons for why you can travel, or and gives you the permits.
That sounds entirely sensible. If only a government would pick that up. Helen Dalton, when it comes to school students, have you been having to deal with anyone where kids have been kept from being able to get back to their parents across the borders?
Absolutely. So there are children that are in boarding school in Melbourne, and the difficulty for them to get home. I haven't been updated with this current set of rules with them, but that has been a huge issue with kids trying to get back home, often not seeing their parents for quite a while. So I think we've got to get back to tours a bit and get a sort of kind of a sensible resolution to all of this, because these lives are, they're very. It's difficult for a child to be away from home, and they need to get home. I think that's really very, very important. But it can be done safely. But governments often just put it in the too hard basket and won't address the issue. And I think if we all work together, it could be simply resolved.
Well, that's I think Griffith, not far from you. There was the young boy, the 3-year-old, who couldn't get back to Queensland, for instance. It seems bizarre to think that he was a COVID risk because he wanted to be back with his parents.
Yeah, look, and you know what? The sad bit about it is it takes media pressure to actually make the change. So they won't deal with it until it becomes, on the front page of the newspaper, and then they'll change their minds and allow, this child to get home. Why does it take that? Why can't we just ask for some sensible resolutions to some of the problems and work through it? I just don't understand. And it causes a huge amount of anxiety for people when they've got to go to these ends to actually get a sensible outcome. And we shouldn't have to do that. We are Australian, and we should be able to contact those people in the bureaucrats and work through sensible outcomes for people. We've got to live our lives.
Yep, quite right, Helen Dalton. And now, just lastly, yesterday there was an inquiry in the New South Wales Parliament regarding floodplain harvesting, this continuing debate in New South Wales in the northern part of the Murray-Darling Basin. You followed some of the inquiry evidence. What was your takeaway from it?
Look, it was very interesting, but I think the testimony from Marianne Slattery was very interesting, where she's alleging that they've changed the cap figures. In other words, they can take more water in the north, and they still claim it's part of the cap. So we need to really look at what's happening. So I still believe, and so does a number of people, that floodplain harvesting is illegal. We need to get to the bottom of it. Most people that gave testimony yesterday all want to have licences issued. The government has been kicking the can down the road for 20 years with this. We need the meters, we need the licences, and we need to be within the cap. In other words, don't take any more than your fair share. And I think that would add a lot of surety back into irrigation communities, because at the moment everyone's in limbo. Everyone wants the government to make sure that we are metered and monitored, and that we are doing the right thing. That was the big message yesterday.
And the New South Wales government, though, they have tried to put some regulations before Parliament to achieve that end. They say they are trying, but you've been concerned they're not really up to scratch, these regulations? No,
that was they weren't well done at all, and it was kind of almost open slather. So we need to sit around the table again and have a look and get some sensible outcomes so that all communities have their say, not just select groups in the north or, different irrigation groups up in the northern areas. Everyone needs to have their say. We need water to flow down the Darling River. We need providing an end of system flow. We also need to have water for critical human needs and for Indigenous and also for those people that are running huge amounts of livestock along the river. We need our fair share. So it's about getting some sort of equity back into sensible water management, and the New South Wales government needs to change tack and needs to take. I hope they're actually listening to the inquiry, because there'll be solutions to all of this. And I think that open and transparent conversations will make a big difference to the outcome, rather than hiding behind, they seem to have not be open about some of the decisions they make. I am concerned that Melinda Pavey next week will reintroduce another bill while the inquiry is still going on to talk about floodplain harvesting, and that, to me, is not right. We've got to get the outcomes, see what the outcomes and recommendations are, for this inquiry and go from there. So she's jumping the gun again. So I believe.
Helen Dalton, a member for Murray, thanks for your work on that and for talking with us again on Flow.